Hi, Mike from RunPhys.com. Thank you for watching today's video, and please consider subscribing to the blog if you haven't already. And also please consider sending me a suggestion of another topic of a video that you would like to see. You can either reach out to me on Twitter, or you can send me an email at info@runphys.com. I'd love to hear from you what kinds of topics that you would find helpful in these videos. Now today we're going to talk about addressing a cranky hamstring. Now it's very common to have tight hamstrings that are just sort of chronically tight and lacking flexibility, but it's also not uncommon, especially with runners, to have a hamstring that just seems cranky and either strained or pulled, or it just really acts up anytime we try to run. So I want to go through some of the common underlying factors, as well as what you can do about that to help keep your hamstrings more healthy with running. Now most often when a hamstring gets injured or strained in some way, it's not the hamstring's fault. It's usually a situation where there's imbalance or lack of flexibility at the hip, and what that does is that puts the hamstring in a precarious position where it's suddenly got to overwork to make up for a mess created by the hip. So a lot of our focus today is going to be on making sure our hips are moving in a way that sets our hamstrings up for the least amount of stress and sets them up for success, so our hamstrings can be an asset to us and not just a cranky muscle group. So the first thing we're going to do is work on the flexibility of our hips. In order to do that, we're going to use either a tennis ball or some sort of a trigger point ball or something you can use to roll out the glutes, as well as we're going to pick on the hamstrings a little bit here in a moment too. So you're going to get down on the ground. In this case I'm using a little ball, and you put it right in the middle of your glutes and put your pressure on it. Roll onto it a little bit and then gently roll back and forth in very small amplitude to help loosen up your glutes. You're going to do that for 2 to 3 minutes until you feel the glutes really relax. Then we're also going to focus on the hamstrings themselves, because again, when a hamstring gets cranky, it's very common for little strains to occur within the muscle fibers. And when that happens, we need to do all we can to try to get those strained fibers to line back up again, so that way the scar tissue doesn't create this chronic knot, which will then in turn lead to bad things in the future and cause that hamstring to just sort of stay chronically tight. So you're going to find the area that feels the most painful or the most tight. You're going to use, again, a little ball or a can of soup or something that you can get fairly specific onto that spot. You're going to find that spot and you're going to roll back and forth. And you want to go in the direction of the hamstring, so rolling from hip to knee. And you're also going to do that for 2 to 3 minutes, hopefully feeling that it's less tender afterwards than it was at the beginning. From there we need to do a stretch for the hip, again, that allows the hip to gain the flexibility it needs, especially with the rotational movements and the side-to-side movements that our hips need to be able to do appropriately. So we're going to get down to what's called we're going to call it a modified pigeon pose. Those of you that are really into yoga, this may look familiar. So you get down on your hands and knees, you bring the one leg forward, and then rest your weight, or walk your weight backwards until you feel a pretty aggressive stretch on the leg that's in front. Once you've gone back as far as you can, then you're going to just gently rock back and forth, feeling a very aggressive stretch in the glute area. You're going to go back and forth about 30 times. You're also going to go side to side about 30 times. Again, feeling a very aggressive stretch. And what you should feel is that it is very aggressive and very thorough, but it also loosens up as you do it. And one of the questions you may ask is, how do I know if that's an appropriate stretch for me or not? A quick self-test that you can do is simply lie down on your back and grab one shin and rotate your ankle up towards your opposite shoulder, and then compare sides. If one side feels tighter, or if both sides feel tight, then that's a good sign that this would be an appropriate stretch for you to do. Then after you do the stretch, go back to that test, and hopefully you'll see a difference there, which means that you're doing some positive things to keep stress off your hamstrings. Lastly, we need to do a strengthening exercise to make sure that the hip and the hamstrings are working well together. So for this exercise, you can do it off of the bottom step of a set of stairs, or anything else that you can step up onto. You're going to balance on the leg that you're trying to strengthen, and what you're going to do is you're going to alternately step back and down at 45-degree angles. So if we're stepping on our left side, if we're strengthening our left side, you're going to reach behind you and back to your left at a 45-degree angle, come back up, and then same thing to the right. You don't want to put all your weight on the foot that's touching the ground, but you're going to go back and forth like that 10 times each side, feeling a good awakening of the glute muscles as well as the hamstrings a little bit too. So doing those exercises, especially the stretching ones every day, are going to make you a lot more flexible, and again, give you a much better chance that your muscles are going to work well together. So give those a try. Let me know how they go, and again, please give me suggestions for other videos that you'd like to see. Have fun with those. Run fast, friends.